Ku'ule Agbayani.
Good morning, beautiful people. Let's wake up in the den. Alongside Paul, Brecht, Michael Lasquero, I'm Ku'ule Agbayani. Welcome to the show. Happy Monday. Yes, we will get to a lot of University of Hawaii football talk, as that is definitely the biggest game. And by the way, you're welcome, everybody. I was manifesting it last week, and I felt like leading up until Saturday's game that Hawaii had a chance like anybody else against Boise State, and that's what we saw, and then it all fell apart in the fourth quarter. But again, we will get to that in just a second. Also coming up on the show, we'll get into some high school sports as we are kind of coming to the tail end of high school football, and we saw some interesting quarterback news in the high school football world right before we actually jumped on anyways, that Kahuku could potentially be getting a transfer quarterback that could likely start, and he's coming over from the continent, that could start potentially this weekend, as soon as this weekend. So we'll see. We're trying to find out more information as we can, but we'll talk about high school sports in the second hour. Also with some big news as it deals with girls volleyball that Michael will tell us about, with some upsets, and then the OIA girls volleyball playoffs. The brackets are set, so we'll get to that as well. Also a little bit of Hawaii women's volleyball and soccer, as the University of Hawaii women's soccer team didn't necessarily add to their winning streak, so their win streak officially ends at 7. However, they still remain undefeated after coming out with a tie yesterday at UC Irvine. So still have not lost in over a month, but the win streak, technically by all accounts, has come to an end at 7, and still continues, though, the best start in program history. So a lot to get into, of course, but yeah, we'll have to start off with the University of Hawaii football game on Saturday. Hawaii falling to number 17 at the time, Boise State, 28-7, in what, by all accounts, up until the fourth quarter, was very much anybody's game. A game that nobody, or except for, I guess, maybe, like I said, us in this studio being our positive selves throughout the weeks, that Hawaii was very much in this game, but just coming up a little too short. Now, there were some, like anything else, some significant plays in the game / penalties that ultimately led to some touchdowns that we will get into more details. But just looking at the game itself, I mean, it was one that, one, shout out to everyone that attended, because it was a sold-out crowd. So gives yourselves a pat on the back. And because Hawaii kept it close through majority of the game, I remember going into that final 15, in which it's in honor of Colt Brennan and One Love by Bob Marley plays. Everyone has their cell phone lights out. And I'm like, we're heading into this fourth quarter and still very much have a chance, only being down 13-7. Again, third quarter was completely scoreless. And heading into that fourth, and everyone was still in their seats thinking that this could actually happen. There is a chance for Hawaii to come out with this huge upset, and being in the game that long, especially losing one of your best defensive players, and Peter Manuma in the very beginning of the game didn't even really take a defensive snap. From what I've been told, he seems, and we'll hear from Coach Timmy Chang actually coming up in the next segment and what he had to say post-game. Haven't gotten a clear update on Peter Manuma. They did take him to the hospital afterwards just for precautionary reasons, but so far haven't heard anything, so we'll keep you guys updated with that. Also, Pefele Ashlock was a bit banged up during that game, so a lot of these things that were going against Hawaii in terms of their players, we were still keeping up there. The defense is still doing all their everything that the defense could have done, except for some of the mistakes here and there, like the targeting call, which I still do not agree was a targeting call. But you know what? Maybe that's a conversation we can have for another time. And the targeting call that ended up leading to the first Ashton Dentu touchdown, which continues I've heard this song before, and we didn't like the ending. But if you look at some of we'll pull it up for you right here. And again, the final going at Boise State and Hawaii, and on our YouTube, some of Michael's awesome photos there right now. Don't forget, we are streaming now and every Monday on our YouTube channel. If you guys have anything to say, you can text us in at 808-888-KG1. That's 808-888-5481 as we pull up just the final and also the taking a look at the overall team stats via hawaiiathletics.com and the drive chart. When you guys look over there, now we look at some of the total yards of 450 for Boise State to Hawaii's 279. Passing yards, Hawaii outpassing Boise 264 to Boise's 217. I think the biggest concern that everybody has had, though, is when you take a look at the rushing yards that we see right there. Boise having the Heisman Trophy frontrunner and running back Ashton Janty, 233 rushing yards for Boise State, where for our Rainbow Warriors, just 15 rushing yards. And I think also the other concerning thing is how many carries Braden Shager also took himself. He also had one of the longest rushes, but with 22 yards. So Braden, and you'll also hear from Braden coming up in the second hour, just some of these stats that stand out that ultimately change some of these games. But I want to bring you gentlemen in for some of this conversation. Again, next segment, we'll hear what Coach Timmy Chang had to say post-game, and then we'll also get into some of our takeaways coming up a little later in this first hour. But just want to get you guys in here, Paul and Michael, on what your, I guess, initial takeaways are.
I think you lined it up pretty well in a lot of ways, where Hawaii gave themselves every opportunity to be in this game up until the very end. The defense, while I know everybody might look at the box score and be like, you gave up over 230 yards on the ground, how the heck is that a good day? They had a pretty nice performance, and like you mentioned, a few plays go the way of Hawaii, and we're perhaps talking about how a goalpost is going down Waialae.
I might still be hungover.
Right. It's one of those, but that can't be the case as well, because when your defense plays that well and gives you that type of opportunity, you'd really like to see them capitalize on it more. And it's, once again, just the little plays here and there, right, where you see a missed field goal, and then all of a sudden it's still a 6-point game instead of a 3-point game, and then the offense doesn't take what's there for them at times, or we see drops, or we see missed assignments on blocking, or we see the ball be held on to too long, where you have one really good play and then it comes back. Even on the Braden run that you mentioned, it really was a 32-yard run or a 39-yard run, and instead it comes back a little bit because of a penalty that happened after he had gotten past the sticks. So Hawaii with a lot of really good in that performance, but also kind of like them, I'm kind of getting sick of saying, yeah, they have a lot of really good in that, but it still resulted in a loss, and it just sucks.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing is it's the same script almost every game this whole year, where I feel like we've been in every game and every game's been winnable. And there is an alternate universe where we're 6-0, but it's not. We have the same thing. We're 0-4 against FBS teams. The defense did phenomenal. Credit to the defensive coaches for changing the scheme, mixing it up, because they really showed a game plan of how to stop Janty, which is to force him inside and have the rest of the defense get there, instead of when he had that long touchdown run where he was able to bounce it outside. For the most part, they've kept them inside between the tackles and just make everybody come there. Offensively, though, that was very tough to watch. I rewatched it last night for the most part. Was particularly focusing on the sacks, because that's the big number 8. And again, you do have to give credit to Boise. They were the number 1 team in sacks coming into this game, and there's a reason for that, right? We always hear, when you do the press conference avails, we always hear Sam Houston State, we hear San Diego State coaches, we hear Boise State coaches being complimentary of Hawaii. For Hawaii, we got to be complimentary of the other teams, because, hey, that team can really get after the quarterback. With that being said, let's adjust. If the team is leading the nation in sacks, what do we do to prevent that from happening? And I will put on a little post later today, because not every sack is equal, but the first sack I think that was in the game at the end of the first quarter was the biggest one, where there was really points left on the board. We were in the red zone. I think we're at the 13-yard line. It was third down. And instead of just throwing it away, Braden Shager takes a sack, which runs the clock down to the end of the first quarter. And in the first snap of the second quarter, Kansei, who learned how to kick the field goal on YouTube, has to kick on the opposite side where the sun was still coming down, and for the most part of that drive, he's been visualizing kicking that side. But you know, you don't take that sack there. It was a 39-yard field goal. It's a 30-yard field goal. Much more makeable if you're 10-3 heading into the second quarter. Where it's a different story. It's a different game. So there's just a lot of things, and I think the frustrating thing is that no one knows the answer, and that's what sucks. It's like something drastic has to change, and that's a conversation for another segment. But that's the frustrating where it's kind of boiling. I think it was even boiling into our group chat, guys. We just had to kind of stop on Saturday nights, like, hey, we'll talk to each other in the morning and on Monday. And
we had to
whatnot.
like completely step away, and Michael is totally saying it true because we were all just like so frustrated because it was so close. Like it would have been different if what most of the country thought that yes, okay, the spread number was right there, but for the most part, most of the country thought we were just going to get steamrolled. Ashton Genty's going to run all over Hawaii, and the rest is history. Fans would have been heading for the exits at halftime and all of that stuff. But the fact that Hawaii was in it, like they were almost every single game, except for Sam Houston, that's why everyone says very much we could have only had one loss because Sam Houston, even though I will still say, hey, we have the better players, but Sam Houston clearly had our number and blew us out from the get-go. So that should be like the only blemish. Where the other games, even this one against Boise, could have very much gone either way, and we will always give props to the defense because, yeah, when you look at, we talked about it last week heading into this week where Ashton Genty, his longest carry was always for 60-plus yards and a few games up into the 70s. Hawaii held him to just that 54-yard long and held him down, quote-unquote, down to just over 200 yards a game, where it's something that a lot of people did not expect, unless, of course, you've been listening to this show the entire time. But all the credit and so much credit to the defense. And please, let's not, when it comes to the offensive side, Braden Shager is definitely a player that probably deserves like the least amount of blame, even though I know he's always like the one that everyone's going to say first and talk about changing the quarterback. If you guys watched it, and actually, Michael, coming up in a couple of segments, I do want you to get into the schemes just to explain that to everybody, where Braden is doing all that he can with the plays that are being called for him. And he's taking a beating, and you'll hear some of that frustration coming up in the second hour when we hear what he had to say in the post game, because that's something else I thought about after too, guys. When I listened to it and I rethought about the game, I was like, all right, I can kind of sense the frustration, because when you're getting that banged up, change it up a little bit so that you have a quarterback that doesn't have to. That kind of gives me the tell that, okay, maybe the things that were being drawn up meant that he would be running more, and he's tired of doing that and getting banged up.
It was, I don't know, a really weird Saturday night post game in a lot of ways. I'm glad we keep bringing up the defense, though, because I really do want to emphasize how well they played. They held Boise State to 28 points. This is an offense that came into the weekend averaging 50.6 points per game. They put up almost 50 last week and a half against Utah State, man. It's like the defense came out. They held the Broncos to their season low, the now 15th ranked, by the way, in the nation, Boise State Broncos, to their lowest amount of points this year, playing a team who just beat Ohio State as well. I don't know. It was a really, really quality performance by the defense, and the offense
and without
had
Peter
moments.
Manuma.
And that's another thing, is that without Peter Manuma, without Ezra Ivaimalu for
majority,
I was going to say more than half the game. Caleb Brown didn't even suit up. He was in street clothes, per our Michael Lasquero. You go through, even Jalen Smith left with a stinger at one point. I believe he did return. And then on top of that, you do see Pafele Ashlock leave on the other side of the ball for the offense. It was a rough day for Hawaii, and nonetheless, they still came out and competed. And that in part is why we do believe in them so much, or did believe in them so much going into the year, and are frustrated why the results are what they are at this point.
Yeah, all right. We got to step aside for a quick break. When we come back, though, we will let you guys hear exactly what head coach Timmy Chang had to say. Anywhere, we'll be back in a couple of minutes here on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Stuck in Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and Michael Lasquero recapping the University of Hawaii football game in which they lost to number 17 at the time, Boise State 28-7. Boise has now moved up a couple of spots in the AP Top 25 poll. Before we get into more of what our takeaways are of the game overall, want to let you guys hear what head coach Timmy Chang had to say following the game, and here it is.
It's a really hard-fought game. I thought our guys went toe-to-toe with a really good team, and when calls get overturned and don't go your way, you lose a little bit of momentum in there. But proud of my guys in fighting and continue to try to get better. Well, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to coach better. We need to get better. And we need to execute and make plays.
We get tremendous effort, but it also seemed like that there are just again some untimely penalties and drops and lost sacks too, right? What happened?
Yeah, untimely penalties. Those are things that are guys are trying to make plays and guys are trying to do good things. It's they're costly. There's we think we're going to get a fumble, and there must have been some really good evidence to overturn that one. But that's a tough break, as we're still in there 13-7, and stop them right there. I think we're going to get the ball on the 6-yard line or 8-yard line or wherever that is, and it doesn't go your way, and so now you got to answer the call again. Okay, so pretty tough. And then with the sacks, I just got to go look at it, okay, and see if there's throws to be made, if there's protections to be made, there's routes to be ran, those type of things, and so we'll go look at that and see if we can get those fixed.
Hey, Coach. Gente in the end got his numbers, but how did you feel like you guys did defending him tonight?
Yeah, I think over time, I think for sure that it was hard-fought runs by him as we try to put all 11 bodies on him, and a great player. Again, I'm proud. I'm proud of our guys because I think they answered the call to stop a great team and a great player in respect. But I thought our guys did really well. It's just at the end it gets away a little bit, but they fought really hard.
Braden had 8 sacks. Just talk about what caused the protection and whatnot, and just when you look at the film, just what do you think has to change?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, and so it's going to be a combination. Usually the sacks come a combination of protection, route reading, and reads from the quarterback. And so we'll go back and look at the film.
Coach, just kind of looking ahead, any type of silver lining that you guys can look towards as you guys move through the rest of the season, obviously going on the road next week to a pretty hostile environment? Yeah,
it's the silver lining is there's some spots that we're really good at, and there's spots that we have to be better at. I challenge some of those guys that in their individual areas, when they get the call in week 6, they got to be better. Guys have to play better, okay? And it's a team game. All 11 guys got to play, but when guys have to get and do their job, we're counting on them to do their job. We're all counting on them. The team's counting on them. The guys on the sideline. It's university and the state, and then we know what's at stake. You know what I mean? And so this whole state's counting on guys to make plays and do their deal. You know what I mean? And I challenge those guys, man. Your week's got to be better. Challenge them. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But every choice that they make has to be, better. And so, we're gonna grow from it. We're gonna watch them respond, and then we'll understand what type of team we are.
What are the adjustments like during the week, knowing you didn't have Sibo and also Crowdus was out, and then losing Peter and Ezra during the game?
Yeah, tough losses. I mean, you're talking about starters. You know, you're talking about guys. You're talking about guys that are impact players for us. And you know, when they go down, you know, the next man's up. And so, you know, it's why I challenge. It's why I challenge the guys. That's going to happen. You know, your number's going to get called. And the question is, you got to be. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to be ready to answer the call?
Coach, yeah, how do you, you know, keep these guys motivated after playing in so many games that, you know, could have gone either way, and today was another one of those?
Yeah, you know, it's part of it. It's part of it. And here's the thing, man. I mean, when we sit in here and we sit in this exact room, I mean, we're talking about life. You know, we talk about life more than anything, right? This football is just a little microcosm of and it's small compared to the real game of life. And so, you know, I told those guys, right, no, there's another call. Another call doesn't go our way. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's, you know, things don't go your way all the time. But it's how you fight back. It's how you bounce back from adversity. That's all the things that matter. It's the same thing that everybody sitting in this room deals with, adversity. And how you respond to that is what makes you who you are, right? These guys are not defined. And I told them before the half, I said, we're not defined by wins and losses. That doesn't define you as a man. What defines you as a man is how you carry your business and what you do and the person that you are. Love them boys, man. I love them boys, but, you know, how we go back to work, we challenge them. And, you know, they're going to be down, right? They're going to be down. But then this is where you find out, you know, who's in. Yeah, who's in? Yeah, who wants to represent Hawaii? Who wants to represent Hawaii football? And so, if you have any of those guys, you quickly, immediately get rid of them.
And that was UH football head coach Timmy Chang answering questions from the media following Saturday's loss to Boise State, in which we lost 28-7. Again, just down. It's hard because we were only down 13-7 heading into the half. Third quarter was scoreless. And then Hawaii letting up 15 unanswered points to Boise State in that final quarter, which was the tough part. And the thing that's always going to remain hard because we were that close. And it was one of those so close and yet so far, but also what we've kind of been saying. It's kind of the same story. I think I've seen this film before. I didn't like the ending. And it's happened time and time again. I mean, we go back to almost every single game that resulted in a loss, except for Sam Houston, that we always come back here on Monday and said, we should have won. Like, it would have, if this happened, if that happened. Yes, there were some penalties. Like we said, we had like the Ezra Ivaimalo, which debatable, targeting penalty in which he gets ejected. And then that results right away to the side he usually plays on, to the side where Ashton Genty goes in for that long run and the score. So things like that seems to be stuff that has haunted Hawaii more times than not, where there are these significant calls that get made and then it results in a big play for the other team or affects Hawaii drastically. And that's the frustrating part is who, I mean, like Timmy said, of course he's going to take the blame and say it comes down to coaching. And part of it is. Like, I mean, when your players seem to be undisciplined almost every single week with some of these penalties that are very much preventable. Like I said, there are some plays where, hey, you just get a little too fired up and sometimes happen. Yeah, there's going to be holding calls here and there, but that's only minimal yards, right? Usually doesn't change the game drastically. But some of these penalties that result in a loss of significant yardage, now you start to wonder, like, why does the team come out and they seem to be this undisciplined? Because the talent is there. We saw it. Again, we'll double down on how well the defense did. Shout out to Dennis Thurman and all the defensive coaches, because to contain Boise State and Ashton Genty the way that they did, yeah, of course, you look at the final box score and whatever, over 200 yards that Ashton Genty netted. But when you're there watching the game, it didn't feel like, oh my gosh, like we are just getting dominated by this guy and like future NFL guy, yada, yada, yada. Hawaii, to their credit, was very much in it, put up more passing yards than Boise State did. But at the end of the day, it still resulted in a loss, and that will continue to be frustrating for fans and for all of us in the media, because we see it and we go to some of these media availabilities and we know and we see the practices and we see, you know, Timmy always talks about playing for Hawaii, and they do. I mean, these guys, like they want to play for this state, and they do have, by all accounts, like the best attitude and not believing that they're not in these games, right? You saw that defense, but they went into that
There's
game
not an energy
believing,
issue.
yeah. So it's just that's where with the fact that we haven't seen more wins, knowing that it's a better team, because I know Paul and I have said it all the time. We're going to be real with ourselves, especially even when we talk about like men's basketball per se. Sometimes the other team is just that much more athletic than you.
Sometimes you're outfoxed, man.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Happens.
And hey, with this Hawaii team, sometimes, especially when we go back to that UCLA game, like, and seeing even Northern Iowa, seeing how big their linemen are compared to ours. But you know what? Hawaii has been finding ways to manage and essentially contain. And that's where it just gets so frustrating, because as easy as it is to offensively to blame Braden Shager, I'll say it before and I've said it again, that he, to me, is probably one of the last that deserves to be blamed at this point, because of course he throws the interception here and there, but like, I mean, not every quarterback is going to be perfect, but he seems to be playing these games accordingly and sacrificing his body, and I don't think that is the change that needs to happen right away.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where things go from here, right? Where Braden is clearly getting sick of taking a beating, because he is, not just from the sacks, but from running so much, because we've seen him. It's not like even when he slides, other defenses are holding off. In general, the offense, I mean, even so, a couple of times, just a caught ball to start the game, right? Where one, you have a pass directly into the sunlight to Jonah Ponoke. He's unable to handle that one. That probably, either way, toss it up, whatever, stinks. Second one, hits a guy right in the chest. Third one, nice play, nice defensive breakup, but the ball's in Nick Senecal's hands, right? He has it in his hands. And a great play, once again, by the Boise defender to get back in there and make the play. But let's say a wide receiver makes a play right there for him. He catches that ball. That's a 30-yard gain. All of a sudden, you're in Boise State territory to kick things off. Instead, it's a 3-and-out. You punt it back to him. And go on, right? The little moments, the fourth quarter where you have an Ashton Jeanty fumble that you recover after Boise State is driving down. It's a 13-7 game, and all of a sudden, things get flipped on their head. And after review, it gets changed. Your defense has to go right back out there. And on the very next play, a 5-yard touchdown pass to Jeanty. They go for 2, and it's a 21-7 game. And you're trying to come back from the length of the field instead of a 13-7 game coming off of a turnover. And it would have been the first time that Hawaii has won the turnover battle against Boise State in how long, right? It's those type of things where you see the moments. They're right there. And I mean literally right there in your hands. And it gets taken away from you in the last moment. That's why it's disappointing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, all right, we do need to step aside for a quick break, so we'll come back to continue our UH football conversation and let you know some of the games that you may have missed in the Mountain West as well, because I was proven wrong for one of those games. So we'll be right back on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to all of you, the beautiful list of all the beautiful people. Let's Wake Up in the Den alongside Paul Brecht, Michael Lasquero. I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani. Mahalo for tuning in this and every weekday morning here on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network from 8 to 10. Every weekday except Thursdays when we have Shark Boost Weekly, and then streaming live every Monday like we are right now on our YouTube channel. You guys can text us at 808-888-KGU1. That's 808-888-5481. Also on our YouTube, we do have up there the Timmy Chang post game in case you missed it, and also the post game from the players in Braden Shager and Elijah Robinson, which those of you listening will be able to hear it a little later in the second hour, and then we will give some of our takeaways in that too. But speaking of takeaways, Michael, I want to bring you in real quick because I know you have more of the eyes in terms of like the play calling and kind of seeing certain things that I don't see because you've been around like this game for so long and really know how to explain it more. So every time we talk about like changing the play calls, especially we're talking about the offense, because clearly, like we said, the defense seems to be doing everything that they need to do in order to keep their team in the game, but offense has been kind of the more frustrating part. So try to explain to the beautiful people as best as you can for all of our listeners that will overall understand what we mean about maybe changing up some of the play calling and maybe some of the schemes that you see as not working, and maybe things that you think could work or some things that you observed, because I know our text message was going crazy with that stuff where you're like, see, this guy or this person's open. So just talk about some of the things that you saw overall in terms of these schemes and formations for UH.
Yeah, so we'd always talk about the running game and how we need to get better at that. Well, in the run and shoot, there are certain passing plays, kind of like bubble screens or throws into the flat, where that is an extension of the running game. I take that quote from Milani head coach Rod York. And there's some plays where the flat is open, Pofele Ashlock is open in the flat, but Braden doesn't choose to hit that and instead tries to go for a deeper, bigger chunk play. And that's where there's kind of like a not a good fit right now with the offense. Now, and how can we get better? The biggest quick fix that I think we can do is utilize more empty sets. Out of all the 8 or 9 or 10 sacks, however you may count it, that Braden Shager took or was sacked on Saturday, none of them came in an empty set. When he's like, well, I thought you need the running back to block. Well, if the running back, or in this case, Tylen Hines, is lined out wide, there might be a linebacker on him, but either way, it also allows the offense to kind of see who's coming with pressure.
By the way, for everyone that doesn't know, an empty set means, like when you look at the NFL and say Derrick Henry standing right there by the quarterback, that's usually with the running back there. Empty set means there's no running back there. So
yeah,
I'm trying to explain for all of our beautiful people. Yeah, empty. So just for all of our listeners, I think of my mom listening. So empty set. That's what Michael says when it's an empty set. Continue.
I think next week when we do this segment, well, I'll send Kuz some pictures to throw up there for our YouTube
audience for the YouTube.
Yeah,
we'll have
we
them, like fake out the drawing that they do on like.
But anyways, we had Tylen Hines score 2 touchdowns on the receiving game, and those came out of empty sets. One thing that is kind of frustrating with this offense, where I feel like we're stuck in like a past decade, is there is no pre-snap motion. There is no window dressing. When we saw Ashton Jeanty caught that receiving touchdown, we had the wide receiver motion from one side to the other side, only for him to leak in the flat. Because when we have pre-snap motion, that gives the defense something to think about. That gives blitzers something to think about. But if you watch our games, we're kind of stationary. But meanwhile, while our offensive line, our running backs are trying to call out protections, they're calling out protections for defensive players that are no longer in the spots they were calling their protections for. And that allows some breakdowns in pass protection. I think there's one play where one defensive tackle just whiffed. He just went right in between Zen Sotelo or Kuape Hopo and Sergio Muosao, like unblocked, unabated. Mm-hmm. And we need those pre-snap motions, those shifts, to kind of get the defense, hey, maybe we're not going to come blitz. You know, they make them pause for a bit, because right now they're just doing their assignments and they're going when they're going to go. And I think Braden realizes this, so he's trying to change up his cadence. But we saw many times where he like kind of like fakes, like, you know, like a fake hut or something like that, and a wide receiver jumps, or running back jumps, a lineman jumps. And so you're trying to do all that fancy stuff with the cadence on your own power to mess up the defense. But instead, you're messing up your own players. And that's where we're just go to empty set and let's put some pre-snap motion in there.
Yeah, and I remember you actually saying it. Was it after the UCLA game? I remember you called it out where you were kind of wondering, like, were there ways that Hawaii was potentially tipping their own plays because of certain things that they do, where the UCLA defense, being that they have really good head coaches on the other side, were able to see that and almost plan for it and obviously communicate to their players. And that could have been what we saw too with Boise. So it just reminds me of when you said that, because but obviously Braden and the offense were aware of that. And so they try to change things up. But like you said, it could be ultimately messing up everybody else and not being on the same page. And when you talk about the offensive line too, right? Do you think part of it could be the fact that, part of it is that there are, by some accounts, you can consider them as being unexperienced when they were playing on the other side of the ball, right? And now we got to shift them over to the offensive line. It's not like they're a unit that, to this unit together, has been playing together with Braden. So because there's all of this change up, but you thought they would have got on the same page by now, right? Like I think that's the frustrating part.
I don't think it's inexperience. I think when we block 6 players and the other team blitzes 6 players, their 6 players that are coming after, that are trying to get past our 6 players, are much better. That's just plain and simple. I mean, we saw it with I think it's Phil Steele's preseason rankings, where Hawaii was almost dead last in offensive line. And then again, when you're going 6 versus 6, somebody's gonna beat their 1-on-1s. It's a matter of fact. So what do we have to do? We have to get the ball quicker, and that's not happening.
You mentioned got to win, or obviously win your 1-on-1s. Even when they weren't winning their 1-on-1s, it was crazy how much Boise State would send pressure on third downs. Blitzes felt like they were flying in most of the time. It really did seem that the Broncos had their way. I think you make a lot of great points, though, Michael, because most modern offenses, you see a lot of motion, or at least some form of motion on 70, 80% of their snaps, just to help out the offense, sniff some stuff out. And I mean, you're spot on, right? Phil Steele kind of told us what to expect with this offensive line going into the year for Hawaii, and that's not to pile on to these guys who are working exceptionally hard to try and get better each week, and we understand that. But right now, the results just aren't there, and part of that is also you see it culminating in the run game, where you don't have anything when they do call the 7, 8, 9 run snaps per game out of like a traditional set. It's why you see them get, 9 yards, 10 yards or so rushing outside of Braden scrambles. So you understand why they don't go to the ground more, because they can't get anything going. They don't impose their will on opposing trench players. And now it's started to get to the point where, since they don't run the ball, the defenses are able to just kind of pin their ears back every time.
I will make one point on that second to the last possession we had, where I think Boise scored to go up 21-7. We were driving. We got all the way down to the 6-yard line. I will say, when Boise, we're down 2 scores, Landon Sims actually had success running the football. I think he had a 4-yard carry and a 7-yard carry. So
productive.
When it's obvious that we need a pass, then we can kind of throw in a run play, because the defense is they're pinning their ears back and they're trying to get after us. So it's just time and place when we choose to run the football.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, all of these things shoulda, coulda, woulda, and to the the team's credit, and this is all just like what we can. It's part of our job. I know people want to hear it to give our opinions, but I'm almost like, at the end of the day, we're not there at practice, so it is kind of frustrating too, because what you see is what we see on game day most of the time, and then you're like, this should be doing this. I kind of was thinking about it on our drive here, Paul, when you and I had to kind of like apologize, when in men's basketball, like when Ryan Rapp got the start, and we were like, what's going on? What is going on?
Shout out Ryan Rapp.
What is going on with it? Why is he starting? And then after a few games in, we're like, oh, okay.
That makes
Ryan
a little
Rapp,
bit of sense.
But because we weren't familiar, or leading up to that point, we're like, why is he starting over all of these guys? Da, 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 da. So that's where I think about, like, all right, when it comes to practices, why aren't these things being done? Why is blah, 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 blah? And then you're like, well, sometimes we're not there every time and seeing everything. But we will definitely get into more UH football conversation coming up in hour 2. And you can hear from quarterback Braden Shager and defensive lineman Elijah Robinson and what they had to say following the game on Saturday. But want to give you a quick rundown of what happened or what else scores happened in the Mountain West. Going back to Friday, UNLV continuing their dominance and beating Utah State 50-34. So another the high scoring game for the opponents against Utah State. As we mentioned before, Boise State put up a ton against Utah State as well. Also, a surprising one for me because I know heading into the weekend, I was somewhat surprised that Colorado State was the favorite against San Jose State, but Colorado State beating the Spartans 31-24. San Diego State, and this is where we go back to that loss, and it's frustrating. Another game that we felt we definitely could have won against the Aztecs, going into Wyoming and beating the one-win Wyoming team 27-24. So a close game there, but Wyoming definitely is far removed from the Josh Allen Wyoming that we were used to seeing not too long ago. New Mexico beating Air Force 52-37. Washington State 25-17 over Fresno State. And Nevada, the other team that I was talking about maybe like 3 games in, like, hey, this Nevada team is sneaky good. They kind of had a down, they lost a couple of games, but then they come out with this win over Oregon State 42-37. So here we go, the other Nevada team that I'm like, now I don't know what to think of you, Wolfpack.
I appreciated their coach chirping the Pac-12, Pac-2, Pac-8, whatever, because he was just like, yeah, be a Pac whatever. And I was like, that's a great little quote. Talk your talk, smack, I was going to say, but I was like, talk your talk sounds better.
Yeah.
Just in general, what a fun weekend in the Mountain West. A lot of competitive games and some blowouts.
Yeah, and this is why we needed to win the games that we should have, because the schedule doesn't get easier for the University of Hawaii. Up next this Saturday, they do travel all the way to Pullman, Washington, which isn't the best travel situation. Even though there is a charter flight, you still got to take either a long bus ride to get to Pullman. But that game, 9:30 a.m. Hawaii time, again, Washington State. And then you host Nevada here at home, a Nevada team that just beat Oregon State and has definitely outperformed what the expectation was heading into this season. No, considering in the beginning of the season, we're like, oh, homecoming game, Nevada. Yeah, that should be a win. Now, Nevada, fun fact, in case people forget, the only away game that Timmy Chang has won in his tenure last year was at Nevada. So we will see if they want to get us back for that on homecoming night. Different coach, though, but nonetheless, again, the schedule does not get easier. And then we go at Fresno to play the Bulldogs and then host a top talent UNLV. Just like how I said against Boise State, the fact that Hawaii is playing some of these tough games at home, you at least give yourself somewhat of a chance. But UNLV has definitely won. And then you go and play at Utah State, a Utah State that, yeah, the end scores, they've got blown out by these top teams in UNLV and Boise State. But Utah State also able to put up a lot of points against these teams, more than Hawaii was able to. So I definitely don't want to overlook the Aggies. And once again, this is an away game, which always does not bode well for Hawaii. And then finishing out the regular season, Hawaii hosts New Mexico. So it's
just
not
put up 52.
It's not exactly, like I said, the easiest schedule as we go through the rest of the season. All right, going to step aside. When we come back, though, we will close out hour number 1 with a little bit of University of Hawaii women's volleyball and women's soccer here on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and Michael Lasquero. I just talked a lot about University of Hawaii football as we gotta following the weekend and a game that felt like it was so close but yet so far. But we will get back to our University of Hawaii football conversation coming up in hour number 2 and let you hear from quarterback Braden Shager and defensive lineman Elijah Robinson, what they had to say following the game, and just talk about different scenarios and what comes next. Like what is next for the University of Hawaii football squad now, looking like the chances of a bowl game are all about close to being out of reach at this point. So how do you salvage the season and all of that stuff? So we'll get into more of that. We'll also talk some high school sports to start off hour number 2, as there is some big news regarding Kahuku and them having some additional players as they get ready to face
Plural.
players. Yeah, we thought it was only one player and a quarterback that they were going to have coming up just in time for their big time juggernaut matchup with number 1 Campbell, but word through the grapevine within less than an hour of getting the quarterback news, there could be more players for Kahuku and also for the girls volleyball world. There was a big upset in the ILH side, and then OIA playoff brackets are set. So we will get you a lot of high school sports updates coming up in hour number 2 as well. So but don't you guys stick around on top of more UH football talk. And of course, to round out the entire show in the second hour, we know we got to finish off with talking about the Monday Night Football game and just let's see and get Paul Brecht's predictions. As if you guys are watching on YouTube, you do notice that he is wearing his New York Jets shirt. And the big reason why is because they're in action today. So I will tailor my lovely conversations about the Chicago Bears, by which I did get up at 3:30 to watch that game. So I did very much get up, and it was nice that I could be entertained that early because
we didn't take down the goalposts.
I know.
It was one
true.
sacrifice for another.
Yeah, I was like, I was already like, well, never mind. I'll tell you guys a story in the second hour. Anyways, want to make sure we have some time for our ladies here, as we'll start off with University of Hawaii soccer, as they ended their win streak. So ended their win streak at 7, but still continue their best start to the season ever. They tied UC Irvine 0-0 draw yesterday. So that it always feels weird to say that they ended their win streak, but they did. By all accounts, it did end.
So I saw that at
they're
first.
They're still undefeated, so that feels better. They've been undefeated since like September, or the beginning of September, so more than a month of being undefeated. But it just feels weird, right, to say, oh, they ended, because ending your win streak sounds so depressing, even though it is the proper term to say.
I apologize, I don't remember which of our media peers that it was. I saw one of them tweet out, though, that like, you know, oh, Hawaii's win streak comes to an end, and that was all I read. That is on me. It was the first 5, and I was like, they lost, and I immediately went to their account, and it was a 0-0 tie. I was like, oh, never mind. It just, their unbeaten streak lives on.
Yes,
their winning streak comes to a close, and I was like, okay, fine, semantics, whatever.
Exactly. So still remains unbeaten, and still, more importantly, remain on top by themselves,
number 1
in the Big West standings. But yeah, like I said, it just feels weird, but still, at the end of the day, the defense, we've been singing their praises for the soccer team as well, and Kennedy Justin just proving that she is, and I joke about it because she does look like she has like this cute like baby face, and yet she's an animal in the goal. Like if you saw her come out for some of the saves that she did yesterday, I mean, she's just been so solid as just a freshman. So this University of Hawaii soccer team has just been continuing to do very, very well so far this season, and I couldn't be happier for Coach Bud. If you look at some of the stats, Hawaii 11 shots to UCI 7 shots on goal. However, Hawaii with 1, UCI with 3. Kennedy Justin making 3 saves to UCI's 1. Hawaii having 3 corners to Irvine's 4. Offsides, though, again, proving that the defense, by all of their communication and just being solid in the back there, they were forced Irvine to 3 offsides and fouls. Shout out, ladies. 11 fouls to Irvine 6.
That is That's my kind of team
Exactly.
right there. That's my kind of team.
I'm like,
That's all I got
I
to
don't
say.
know if I should be saying
Right.
that.
I don't have anything else to say other than that's my kind of team. We got that dog in us, and that is what that proves. That's all I'll say.
Like no red card, so that's the main thing.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
hey,
It
if you want to
wasn't
play
dirty.
a little aggressive, that's just what's going to happen. But
You
yeah,
are either the aggressor or the one who's being hunted.
pretty much like how my dad would always tell me, you push her around instead in
Yeah,
soccer.
you
You push
either-
her off the ball.
You push
Don't
or you
pushed
get
her.
pushed.
I think that was like his main contribution to my time like playing soccer because he didn't know anything about soccer and his daughter loved soccer. So the only thing he could contribute was, come on, be aggressive, knock her off the ball. Come on, let's go, daughter. And that's about it. When it comes to everything else in soccer, he's like, good job. I don't know any other thing to contribute. But no, again, shout out to the University of Hawaii women's soccer team. And their next game is in a few days, October 20th at 4 o'clock p.m. at the Waipio Peninsula Soccer Stadium against UC Riverside. So we were wishing Hawaii continue their success. And by all accounts, I still need to schedule a time though, but we will have JC Jika, one of the defenders back there, one of the senior defenders.
Mililani.
And I was just about to say, and thank you, Michael. But yes, I will double down. A Mililani high school grad. Yayo.
I've seen this script before.
No.
Now, does that make
Not
it
with her.
back to back? Because Dallas
No,
Millwood,
she's a
I know
Kamehameha
she's
grad.
Kamehameha, but
From
she's from
Mililani.
Mililani.
My
But
dad
still.
was a former coach.
But I'm from Waipahu, so
Okay,
it's a
you know
little
what?
different.
Fine. I'll hear that out. Fine.
But you are Hawaiian.
I am Hawaiian. Anyways, last thing before we we got to go to our break already, but we will get to more details of University of Hawaii volleyball as well. But Hawaii, just a disappointing loss on Friday, losing in 4 to UC Davis, but at least turning it around yesterday and being able to sweep UC Riverside. That one against Davis was a bit hard. Set scores, especially with Hawaii taking the first set 25-22, and then Davis coming back and beating Hawaii 25-21, 28-26, and then 25-17. But like we mentioned, able to bounce back against UC Riverside. All right, going to take a break. When we come back, we will get into some of the high school sports and the news that we have about Kahuku and potentially adding to their team as they get ready to play the number one team, according to the Scoring Live Power Rankings, in the Campbell Sabres. So don't go anywhere. We'll get you all that info and more University of Hawaii football talk when we come back for hour number 2 here on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Man, I loved playing
to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den, hour number 2. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, Michael Lasquero. We still got a lot to talk about, hence why we go 2 hours, 8 to 10, Monday through Friday here on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network and streaming live every Monday right now on our YouTube channel. Be sure to text us if you guys have anything to say. We'll get into University of Hawaii football a little later in this hour and hear from Braden Shager and Elijah Robinson. But if you guys have anything to text us about anything, doesn't have to be UH football, you can chime in at 808-888-KGU1. That's 808-888-5481. All right, before we get back to UH football, I do want to spend some time with the high school world here in Hawaii, and we'll get into high school football in just a second and some of the big news coming in for Kahuku. But first, want to start off with some volleyball before we get into the OIA girls volleyball brackets. That those are set and the set to begin this week, and we will bring you coverage of the D1 and D2 championship game next week, Wednesday on HSRN and on HawaiiSportsRadio.com. Michael, I know something kind of big you were covering happened in the upset world for the ILH. So just real quick, tell all of our listeners what Midpack was able to do over the weekend.
Yeah, Midpack was able to get their first win over Punahou since September 9, 2010. I was still in high school back then. Paul, you weren't even in high school back then either.
I'm trying to think if
Who
I
was
was
still in her baddie
or...
days, you know.
Oh no, I just got into I was less than a year into sports radio.
Wow.
But yeah, Midpack, you know, they could have won the first 2 sets before reverse sweeping Punahou, but they're a solid team, and they they've had it rough. I think they lost 46 consecutive matches against ILH D1 opponents. Before that win against Punahou, they lost 32 straight against Punahou. So credit to them, credit to Coach David Bain and that squad. You know, they first win of the season came at a good time, and then I mean, anytime you beat Punahou in any sport, that's a big deal.
Oh, especially when you're a school like Midpack, right? Like you're always so used to you'll have Punahou, Kamehameha, Kapalama, sometimes Iolani, depending on what sport each other. But then when you have Midpack or even Pac-5 and other sports competing with those teams, you're like, hey, we're gonna take that. And I get it. Like in certain sports, Mililani is the one that is to be in the OIA, and you're like, yeah, we beat Mililani or Kahuku and some other sports and everything like that. So shout out Midpack. Midpack is the ILH school that I tend to cheer for since I coached soccer there for a few years. So I'm always they have a special place in my heart. The Owls do. I enjoyed my time there, and I will every time I bring them up, I will say it all the time. That shout out to all of the parents of the girls I coached when I was there, because my 4 years at Midpack as a head coach for JV, never had any parent issues or any complaints or having to deal with that. And I didn't realize how rare it was when I was coaching, but apparently that's really rare to go that long without any issues. So thank you to all of the parents of the girls that I coached at Midpack for being awesome. And I appreciated all of, and I'm now making me miss coaching again. Anywho, all right, let's get into the OIA girls volleyball playoff brackets just real quick. So we'll start off with Division 2. The East one is Castle, and West one is Pearl City. So they have a bye into the semifinals, and in the first round it will be Waianae versus Kailua. And the winner of that will play Castle. And then in the other side, it will be Farrington and Waipahu. And the winner of that will move on to play Pearl City in the semifinal. And again, the championship matches will be next week, Wednesday. The first round for Division 2 starts tomorrow. And then the semifinals will be this Wednesday and championship next week, Wednesday. Going over to Division 1, getting the first round bye, you have Moanalua, Campbell, Kapolei, and Kahuku, your top 2 teams in the East and West. In the first round that starts on Wednesday for Division 1, Nanakuli and Roosevelt will play, and the winner will move on to play Moanalua. Kalaheo and Lelehua are matched up against each other, and that winner will go on to play Campbell. Then on the other side of the bracket, you have Kalani and Wailua. The winner of that will go on to play Kapolei, and then Mililani and Kaiser, and that winner will move on to play the East 2 in Kahuku, and that game will be on Thursday. So again, Division 1 action for the playoff starts on Wednesday. Then the next round is Thursday. Semifinals will be on Monday, October 21st, so next Monday, and the championship next week, Wednesday, which you can hear on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network. So just really quick, Michael, maybe what's the early outlook looking at these OIA playoffs?
Well, Thursday is going to be really fun. I think there's a lot of great matchups. Definitely the 2 versus 3. I know Mililani is the West third. They're going to have to end up playing Kahuku in that Thursday quarterfinal. And Campbell, the West 2, going to have to go up against a really strong Kalaheo team that we saw last Wednesday, where they took a set off Moanalua. So that's going to be fun. I know Moanalua, they look pretty. I'll tell you what, Moanalua, after I saw Punahou and Midpack, they would definitely probably come out second or maybe even third in the ILH. I think this might be the year Moanalua has a really, really solid chance at potentially getting to the state final this year. I will say that. But yeah, there's Kapolei is also really, really good. So it's gonna be a fun time. And shout out to Spectrum, because they're getting the Division 2 semifinals on Wednesday. They pushed it up a day ahead so that they could get some airtime. So shout out to everybody there.
Yeah, that's
Shout out
always
to our D2 athletes too. Just by the way,
of course.
That's always my favorite part about covering high school sports, especially non like football or basketball ones. Is like these athletes don't always get the same amount of coverage, so it's really cool when outlets go the extra step, go the extra mile to make sure that these kids understand that the work they're putting in is just as appreciated and just as cool.
Yeah, so we'll keep you updated with the results as we go through the week, and also what's kind of sets up for next week and our coverage as well. All right, getting over to high school football now as we pull up our high school football scoreboard powered by Scoring Live on our YouTube channel, where you guys can see what happened so far. Some of the scores that stood out. Mililani just escaping Farrington last Friday, winning 20-14 in overtime. I did run into Farrington head coach again, Mike Lafayette, at the football game, and I kind of, razzed him a little bit, like, bro, why are you trying to beat my alma mater here? Even though I know Farrington, his alma mater. But no, see, Farrington, that's why we always said the open division can be anyone's game, which even more so, which we will get to in just a second. Roosevelt, a close one also over Castle last Friday, 27-20 in Division 2. Campbell having an easier win for the Cane Knife as we were expecting over Waipahu, 55-18. Radford over Nanakuli, 27-20. Pac-5 continuing to win. They beat Kamehameha 2, 28-20. Does that count or what, though? Just kidding. Saturday, we'll look at some of the scores. This was one that Michael actually called out last week in terms of the matchup with in Division 1, Moanalua and Lelehua, in which Lelehua did end up beating Na Menehune 13-10 in overtime. So another overtime game that came as no surprise to our Michael Lasquero, as he said this was anticipated to be a lot closer than most people think. Another one, Kahuku, that I thought was closer than I expected. Kahuku just beating Kapolei at Kapolei. In the ILH, you have Punahou beating Kamehameha Kapalama 25-13. One in OIA Division 1, Kailua over Waianae 35-24, and then a bunch of stuff. If you guys want to see all of the rest of the scores, you guys can go to scoringlive.com, which sets up some of the big stuff that's coming up this week. But before we get into that, Michael, just real quick, what is your, I guess, takeaways from this past weekend in high school football?
I think, we just talked about Punahou volleyball losing, but shout out to Punahou football, because I was there for about 20-30 minutes before I went over to the Boise game, and Kamehameha had just scored to go up 7-0, and they were coming off a big win against St. Louis. And Punahou needed that game to extend their season, because if they lost, they would have been out for contention for the ILH berth. Now, they still have another game this week against St. Louis, and if they beat St. Louis, they pretty much force a three-way tie for the ILH stuff. So there's gonna have a playoff, which requires a coin flip, which means one lucky team is gonna have a bye. So that's kind of crazy. But yeah, Kapolei, they're not. See, I mean, they're a really solid team, no matter how you shake it. But on the level of Kahuku, Campbell, and Mililani, it's kind of not there. But well, they do have this Saturday against Mililani, I believe. But Kahuku, kind of getting into the transfer portal and the trade deadline, free agency, whatever it may
you want
be.
to call it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it in the landscape. All right, we've been teasing it almost like since the beginning. So as we mentioned this weekend, so looking ahead to this Saturday, Michael kind of mentioned it, where Mililani and Kapolei still have, I mean, with Mililani barely escaping Farrington, now all of a sudden that game against Kapolei seems like it could be a bit tougher with Kapolei staying in it with Kahuku. That game will be on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. But the really big juggernaut game, another one in the open division for OIA, the number one team in Campbell having to play at Kahuku Saturday evening, which playing at Kahuku, you already get that home field advantage. Not only is it just the crowd there, but also just the bus ride and whatnot that the teams and schools have to take to get out there. But coming out early this morning, we saw that the Kahuku could be potentially getting a quarterback, as we talked about with not only Kahuku but also Mililani, with like just a lot of injuries so far, but being tweeted out earlier today, like almost like right before we jumped on air. I saw a tweet come out from Greg Biggins via 247 Sports saying, in one of the more interesting mid-season transfers you'll see, former Bellflower, California, St. John Bosco starting quarterback Matai Fuiava has moved to Hawaii and enrolled at Kahuku, immediately eligible and could play as soon as this weekend against Campbell, again, the number one ranked team on the islands. So I'm going to kick it over to Michael Lasquero to give us a little bit more updates on explaining how he is even eligible, because there are certain rules in place that prevent players from being eligible this soon, considering he just played this weekend, and also the other things going on from sources you've heard about potentially adding another transfer coming into Kahuku.
Yeah, so for his eligibility, I don't think I can comment on that on air, because there might be, some things that might get looked into. But it's I mean, the OIA rule, I believe, is you need to have 10 days of heat acclimation or hydration, whatever it may be called. So maybe he might not see him this weekend, but maybe in the near future. But speaking of quarterbacks, I do believe that but per another source, Kini Mililani is going to be medically cleared this week. Whether or not he plays, that's another story, but he is going to be medically cleared this week. But for Kahuku, this guy, Matai Fuava, he was kind of splitting time with this freshman quarterback, Koa Malaulu. Sorry, I'm just reading it now.
Let me take this.
But anyways, it's just interesting because he was coming off injury. Per the LA Times. So per the LA Times, this is not just sources. This is per LA Times. He played last Friday, started for the team against Santa Margarita after missing the previous game of an injury. And and again, per the LA Times, the St. John Bosco head coach, he learned that his quarterback has moved to Hawaii via X this morning. So and then his father, Rob Fuava, was also an assistant coach for the Braves. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I was actually supposed to get on a call during the show, but I want to talk about UH football. But after the show, I'm definitely going to be making some calls and trying to, because there's a lot of moving pieces. But allegedly, too, they're also Kahuku's working on getting another transfer, an offensive lineman, in, per my sources, Jacob Maiava, who is an offensive lineman, 3-star commit to SMU, the brother of USC quarterback Jaden Maiava. So I believe he has lived here for some parts of his life. So he's kind of coming back home. So not a true mainland to Hawaii transfer, but he lost his CIF, that's the Southern California state appeal, eligibility appeal on October 4 was the last day he got word. In a article from the OC Register, the Orange County Register, that the attorney said that he there's some violation of pre-enrollment contact rules.
Interesting.
But supposedly he's on his way to Kahuku. It's a fun time here in high school sports.
What a time to be alive in high school sports. Not only are we're constantly dealing with the whole NIL thing and conference realignment in college sports, and then now we just kind of get this gift that keeps on giving with essentially youth sports here in Hawaii. And again, Kahuku, by showing all accounts that wanting to not. I mean, they gotta
not
go
ready
up
to
there.
give up
No,
the crown
they're
yet.
not ready. And I think seeing how Campbell was able to overtake them on all of the local polls here and be number one, it's like, wait a minute, we are the back-to-back state champions here. We should continue to be number one, and obviously we have our reasonings for believing Campbell is legitimately the number one. Well, you know what? This is what we will see. This is what we will see this weekend. Again, the big game is Saturday, especially if Kahuku is able to get this quarterback / maybe a new an additional lineman, and we could see a different game, but we will definitely follow it. Michael will keep us updated throughout the day when he can jump on his phone call a little later and give you guys more information, which we will share with you tomorrow as well. So Campbell and Kahuku going to be an interesting matchup this Saturday in high school football. All right, going to take a break. When we come back, we will get back to our University of Hawaii football conversation and let you guys hear from quarterback Braden Shager and defensive lineman Elijah Robinson and what they had to say following that loss to Boise State on Saturday. So don't go anywhere. Still a lot to go here in hour number 2 on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den alongside Paul Brecht and Michael Lasquero. I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani. All right, going to circle back to our UH football conversation. Hawaii just... It's weird because the final score, it feels weird to say barely losing to Boise State, but if you were watching the game all the way up until the fourth quarter, it felt like they barely lost to Boise State, even though the final score being 28-7. But the defense definitely showing up and showing out, holding Boise State down to just 28 points, and Ashton Genty to 217 net rushing yards. Now on the offensive side, quarterback Braden Shager finishing with 264 yards in the air and a touchdown with a 52-yard long, but sacked. That's the one that stands out for a lot of people. Sacked 8 times, and he did put up technically 55 yards on the ground. However, when you look at the net yards, only 5 yards on the ground, even though the long is listed at 22, and that is partially because of all those sacks that were taken. Landon Sims netted just 12 yards, and as a whole, Hawaii only putting up 15 total rushing yards, which is the lowest. So that's kind of the frustrating part for a lot of, I know, fans to watch and look at kind of the final box and everything. But nonetheless, defensively, they showed up. So before we get to more of our takeaways from the game itself, want to let you guys hear first from what a couple of players had to say immediately following in the post-game media avail. So first, we will start off with Braden Shager, and then right after him, you will hear from defensive lineman Elijah Robinson.
Braden, you guys hang in there for a long stretch of the game, but it seems like when you had momentum, penalties or sacks, I mean, do you feel like at this point we just, is there anything that changed? You've left too many points off, on the field. I mean, is that frustration?
Yeah, no, you're right. We continue to leave a lot of points on the field, and I'm going to come up here and say it's my fault every time, but at the end of the day, we got to have guys step up, and we got to win man coverage. We got to, I got to get protected, and eventually I got to make those plays. But I'm going to continue to challenge those guys in the room, and look yourself in the mirror, and see how you want to finish these last 6 games, because I need some dogs in there, and I think we need a mindset switch, and you need to play like you need to play harder.
A lot of people talk about passing offenses, but make it a little more difficult because it feels compressed. But I know you don't want to make excuses, but do you think maybe you guys maybe you just gotta take it in a little bit more, or?
Yeah, no, I think you can continue to play the what-if game, in the red zone, and you're always going to look back at it and be like, dang, we could have done this, or we could have done that, but at the end of the day, we just didn't execute as a unit, as an offense, and that's been the story for a long time now, so it's very frustrating.
Seemed like you were able to be in the pocket just a little bit longer, just to follow your reads and to follow just the receivers and what they were doing route-wise. Just what you felt as far as what you were looking at as far as just the route running today and protection.
Yeah, I am a pro-style quarterback, and I want to stay in the pocket, and unfortunately there's a lot of times when I have to run the ball, and honestly I don't even want to do that. I want to throw the ball, and I want to stay in the pocket, and I think when I stay in the pocket and am able to, go through my reads, I think I'm very good. So it's just something that we got to continue as a group to get better about, and I'm not going to sit. I'm going to sit here and take the fault every single week, but at the end of the day, we got to get better as a group.
Hey, Braden, Pafeli took a pretty hard hit early on and wasn't available for you guys for stretches or much of the game, I think. How did you just adjust with, the weapons you had available? And I know he's one of your favorite targets.
Yeah, it's tough losing a guy like that, especially when all they want to do is just play man coverage and blitz 6 people. Just got to have somebody that can win, and obviously he can do that, and he's proven it. And, we're just going to have to continue to, practice harder and push those guys in the receiver room to step up and, make some plays for us as a group.
And that was University of Hawaii quarterback Braden Shager following their loss to Boise State on Saturday. Now here's defensive lineman Elijah Robinson.
Elijah, you guys played really tough and everything, but what was first like first losing Ezra and then also trying to tackle Gente?
Yeah, it was tough losing our teammates, 2 starters. But, we have a next man up mentality. We don't feel that there's much fall off. Great players, we love them, care for them. We know that they're game changers, of course. But, we have to be able to count on the next man no matter the situation. So everybody has to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And, we just counted on that. When it came to, tackling him, we all just had to do our jobs. And when we did our jobs, we were in the right places, making the right plays at the right time. So.
You guys played pretty good ball for most of the night. You see that fumble late in the second half there. Feel like you take that momentum swing and then have to go immediately right back onto the field after it gets overturned. How difficult mentally is it to get back in there after feeling like you make such a big play?
Stay ready. You don't have to get ready. We were expecting to go out back on the field. Whether we didn't know what the outcome was. We were hoping for the recovery, of course, from us, but it didn't fall that way. So we were ready to go, get back on that field, and try and make something happen. We like to be on that field. That's why we play this game. So we're not going to complain and cry about it when we can go out there and try and do something about it.
Hey, Elijah, how did Gente present in reality as you're going up against him there in the trenches versus what you saw on film? And did he surprise you at all? Was it stuff you had prepared for or expected?
He's a great player. He made his plays, but, we went into this game knowing that as long as we do our jobs and we are where we're supposed to be as a collective, that, we're untouched. We'll get it done. We'll make it happen. And that's what we did when, we were in the right places at the right time.
The vibe I get from you is that this is one loss. It's a tough loss, but you've still got a lot more season. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. We have 6 more games. We're gonna win out. That's what it is. Just the faith in this team, in this locker room that we have. Just in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Luke 1:37 tells us, "For nothing is impossible with God." And we have all that faith in the world, and we know that we're going to come out on top and make it happen.
And that was defensive lineman Elijah Robinson. And prior to that, you heard from quarterback Braden Shager following that 28-7 loss against Boise State on Saturday. And I mentioned it in the first hour, and you could hear it in Braden Shager's tone that it just really is starting to get really frustrating. So obviously we know as fans and as media, it is getting frustrating seeing Hawai'i be in these games and these games being able to go either way and potentially only having one loss. But right now, there are only 2 wins coming to FCS teams, and the schedule ahead is still very, very daunting for the Rainbow Warriors. But you could hear and you could almost see the body language in that post-game press conference of Braden Shager. Totally 2 different tones from Braden and Elijah Robinson, actually. Elijah Robinson almost looking, I don't want to say cheery, because you never want to say a player is cheery following a loss, but definitely a different vibe. But also it's because we go down to it and you're like, the defense was really in it. Like the defense can walk away from that game, even though the 15 points in the fourth quarter, I get it. But by then you're just tired, again, still without Peter Manumala the entire game, essentially. And the defense being able to hold down a dynamic Boise State offense. So I can understand where Elijah Robinson had a little bit different of a demeanor, because you can walk away from that game defensively and feel like you left everything on the field and you did your job. But then when you look on the flip side with Braden Shager, and the offense is the part that has been not only frustrating in this game, but frustrating for multiple games, because the defense has been able to hold down the other team. The offense still trying to figure it out. And then we mentioned earlier, when you look at their total rushing yards, only 15 on the ground for Hawai'i. So when I noticed watching those 2 post games, that's kind of stood out to me the most, where you're just like, wow, you can tell Braden Shager is beat up and clearly frustrated. You heard his words too there in the post game, where you can feel it boiling in there now, knowing that you feel like there's more that can be done, maybe certain things that are different and not necessarily entirely on just his offensive line getting manhandled, because they're not. There are times he had time, and that's the thing, right? Where on the defensive side, they're doing their job, but offensively, you could totally see the difference in tone from an offensive player to a defensive player.
It was the most concerning thing of the night for me, was finally seeing the frustration come out from Braden Shager, because even before then, if you were watching on the CBS broadcast, you could see towards the end of the game, after he had gotten sacked for, I think, the final time on the sideline, him mouthing off is the wrong way to say it, but him very clearly and vocally expressing some sort of frustration as the offense came off the field and as he sat down on the bench. And that's the first time I've kind of seen that from him, considering especially like this isn't the first time that he or Hawai'i has gone through a rough stretch in a season, or a rough season, or a rough time against a conference opponent. It was weird to hear him kind of let it slip through finally, of the way that he's feeling. And obviously if you get hit that many times, you're probably going to be a little angrier than you wanted to come across as. But it was interesting, and my question now for this Hawai'i team is how they respond and how they bounce back and how they can stick together through this, because are there cracks forming, right? That's the question where, and I don't want to push that too hard, because obviously that's a massive leap to take, but how do you keep this team together when things are starting to go wrong? When you were expecting to be at least 3-3, if not 4-2 at this point, and now you've got the flip side of things. How do the coaches handle that? How do the senior leadership, and that includes Braden, how can they keep their composure and keep it cool? Because I know I've been a little more negative on the whole bowl game, like getting to a bowl game, and how that's probably off the table at this point. At this point, you got to keep it together, because it's not totally off. Fresno State has not looked like the world beaters that they were right?
Mhm.
You have a Washington State game. Yeah, it's hard to play on the road in Pullman. Washington State, they didn't do as well as you did against Boise State, you could argue. At the very least, your defense, right? Where if the offense, which we know can figure it out in some way, shape, or form, can you put it together? Can you sneak out the wins that you need? And, I mean, Elijah Robinson said it, right? Is like, we expect to go and win out. We don't look at the first 6 games and think, oh, these next 6 are kaput. We look at these next 6 games and say, we're winning each one of them. We're confident each week. You need everybody on that same page going forward, not questioning, the effort and yada, yada, yada. And that's, everybody needs to be on the same page. You can't throw teammates under the bus, but teammates also can't put themselves in a place to be thrown under the bus, right? It's a balance of everything. At the end of the day, your leaders do need to be leaders, and that's where I'm going to be looking at most over this next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the other game against a top school in the Mountain West in UNLV is played at home, and the surprising Nevada team so far, it is played at home. So anytime these home games, giving Hawaii gets themselves a chance. We do need to hit a quick break. Before we go to break, though, I do want to mention something that has to deal with the game before, and it just kind of hit me because I didn't bring up the point earlier, but it's just a minor point where we talk about Kansei Matsuzawa and missing that field goal. You guys gave a very good reason as to why, because he had to kick it in the second quarter when he thought he was kicking in the other end zone, but missed the distance of 39. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know people were all up in arms about the San Diego State game, about like, why didn't we go for the field goal?
Oh, yeah,
so
trying to kick the 50-yarder.
So basically, I just wanted to say, this is why. As great of a kicker Kansei is, when you're trying to go for, like, I think it was 48-yard field goal on a slippery surface, this is exactly why that if it's a kicker that's not, like a Greg the Leg or some kind of kicker that's a staple, you're like, all right, we're going to tailor our expectations a little bit. But anyways, I just wanted to give that little nugget in case people are still even. Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Here.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Yeah, try to keep up here. Welcome back to all of you, the beautifulest of all the beautiful people. Hope you guys are keeping up here on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network. Paul Brecht, Michael Lasquero, and I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani. Mahalo for tuning in this and every weekday morning from 8 to 10 on a 95.1 FM, AM 760, hawaiisportsradio.com, and every Monday streaming live like we are right now on our YouTube channel. And you guys feel free to text us at 808-888-KGU1. That's 808-888-5481. All right, just real quick before I kick it over to our Michael Lasquero to talk a little bit more about what he saw from this game, I do want to rehash our conversation a little bit about the quarterback situation, just to explain to some people so far with why I feel like the quarterback change shouldn't really happen right now, especially with Hawaii now needing to win out to even sniff the possibility of a bowl game. And it's still a daunting task considering all the teams that are left for Hawaii to play and the locations with some of the tough games on the road. But Braden Shager, as we heard from in the previous segment, that he, by all accounts, is the best quarterback that we have. When you look at the depth chart, as we saw before, where Micah Alihado seems to have potentially taken over John Keave Sangapolu-Tele as the number 2 quarterback for the team. Now, just to reference that, where you're not sure if you can salvage this season, one thing you do want to salvage is Micah Alihado's red shirt. Now, he's already played a couple of snaps in one game, so that means he only has 3 games left to be able to play maximum in order to preserve that red shirt in this season. And so that's one reason why you maybe don't play him until the ending, because you don't know how he's going to, if he's for sure going to get you wins. You don't know that for sure in real life, not garbage time situation. So it's more of the risk rewards part where you don't want to risk burning that red shirt and it not working out this year anyways. Want to save them for the long term. And maybe you make the change with John Keave Sangapolu-Tele, but if you have the true freshman coming in and taking over that number 2 spot, I don't know if that bodes well in terms of confidence that he's a better quarterback that will do better than Braden Shager. Maybe putting him in here and there, sure. But in terms of starting, I think Braden Shager is going to be your starter like from here on out, no matter what, because he's just clearly the best quarterback in the locker room right now. And I think people also forget that part of being a quarterback, especially in Division I and above, it's all about the playbook. It's all about knowing the playbook, knowing where your receivers are going to be, studying the playbook. It's not just, it's not like when you play recreational flag football and you just go out there and you're like, hey, you run here, you run there, and then you just figure out who's open and throw the ball, right? Like football in Division I, or it just collegiately and up, even in high school, it's all about like the plays and the schemes, and you have to memorize all of that and know where your receivers are, know how fast your receivers are so you can get the timing of everything. So all of these kinds of little things that I think people overlook, where it just feels like, this guy seems like he'll just do a better job, so just throw him in there in front of Braden Shager. But I just kind of wanted to paint that bigger picture for some people that are still calling for Braden or for there to be a change at quarterback. Now, I don't entirely disagree that maybe we'll work in John Keave a little bit, but in terms of Micah Alihado, I definitely am someone that does not want to burn that red shirt. Maybe save him, put him in towards the ending of the season where he can get the game time experience, but not risk like having to burn it if you don't have to yet.
Yeah. And, I do want to give some credit to the coaching staff, because I've been critical in the past weeks about having such a large rotation, either in the defensive backfield in the secondary or at receiver. Well, in this game against Boise, it showed we do need guys to step up. With no Sibo Brown, with no Peter Monomal, with no Dekel Crowdis as well, who was
that is a great
emerging
call by
as
you.
emerging as the deep threat for one of these Shager bombs. We do need to have other players in there that have playing experience. So with that being said, can this thinking also extend to the quarterback position? Now, I'm not saying Braden Shager should be completely benched. No, I mean, and I will quote Rob DeMello on Media, their podcast or another programming, where he's and what I'm saying is that, I don't think you can blame the quarterback. I don't think you can blame the coaching. I don't think you can blame the scheme. I do think you can question the fit. And we heard it in the post game that really piqued my attention, where, Braden, first thing, one of the questions he asked about staying in the pocket, and he said, I am a pro style quarterback. Well,
he questioned the
we're in the run and shoot. The pro offenses are much different. And if you are a pro style quarterback, the pro style quarterback will hit the flat. We before John Gruden got into controversy, we remember him watching him with Marcus Mariota in that clip of Spider 2 White Banana, and it's basically just hitting the fullback in the flat. Take the yards. You don't go broke taking a profit. And Braden continues to not hit the flat while it's open, giving our receivers some time to get yards after the catch, run after catch. And Braden also goes on to say that, hey, I don't want to run the ball and I want to stay in the pocket. But if you remember towards the ending of last year, when we won 3 of our last 4 games, the things where we did get success was when Braden wasn't holding the ball too long. He was getting the ball quickly, and he was a threat running the ball. So it's almost a complete 180 from what we saw towards the ending of last year. And in that Delaware State game, I do want to push back on Paul's point a little bit earlier, where he said that the offense is going to figure out. I don't know if they are. Like, we saw it in the Delaware State game. That was already red flags when they only put up 1 touchdown against the FCS team in the first half. That was red flags. But anyways, going back to what he said about Rob DeMello, he said that there's things that Braden Shager can do that nobody else on the roster can do. The things that he can't do, everybody else can. And that's kind of because I'm watching it, it's like, man, that's a really great, like, there's some throws and some plays that Braden makes. It's like, man, you are a Sunday quarterback. And then there's some plays that's just like, what are you doing? Like, just get rid of the ball and, like, don't hold on to it too long, or just, like, take what's there. Don't look for the big play all the time. And it's frustrating to rewatch over and over again. And I do think it's time. I mean, whoever QB2 is, whatever it be, Michael or John, I thought even the Boise game, you don't have Crowdis, you have Pofele semi banged up, not be able to play as many snaps. You putting a lot of the backup receivers in. Why don't we let the quarterback, who's been throwing to the backups in practice, get some? There's a more chemistry. There's more cohesiveness there, and I don't know. It's just I don't know if we just did a disservice to Braden, changing the offense, changing the coaching, letting him take a beating. It's almost like Tua in a bit, where it's just he had a rough start to his career. And, I know Braden, it has been reported that he took a visit to BYU while he was in transfer portal. And BYU right now, they're undefeated and they're ranked 13 in the country. So I don't know if there's some buyer's remorse, whatever, but I do think we might need to see another quarterback at least play a couple possessions going forward.
Yeah, and I want to remind everyone, and I brought this up before, where to go back, right? Braden was not recruited for the run and shoot. He was not even recruited by this coaching staff. He wasn't recruited by Coach Rolo. He was recruited by Todd Graham and came in here, and that's Todd Graham's offense is entirely different from Timmy Chang and the run and shoot, or a version of the run and shoot that we see. And we've mentioned it after the first few games, or where we saw the offense just kind of not be able to figure it out, where it's trying to just jam a square peg into a round hole, where that's why it's hard for me to go in hard on Braden Shager, because I do think he's a very good quarterback and he has sacrificed his body so many times. But yeah, again, I feel like a broken record, but we have said it, like, feels like every time the offense looks like this, where he's not a bad quarterback. That's why it's hard for me to just be like, oh, we got to like bench him or put in another one, because he's a good quarterback and it's not his fault that the offense isn't completely centered around the type of quarterback that he is. And I think that's the point that a lot of people are missing. Again, I'm not going to be here and be, like the one that be like, oh, we should call these plays, these plays. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't see the talent all around, but
no offensive coordinator coup, huh?
Yeah, I'm definitely far removed. But he was recruited by, again, a different coach, meant for a different offense, and the fact that he has been able to be the solid starter in under a coach that's not his player, under a guy that is a quarterback, and by all accounts would want to get somebody or have somebody under center that would be like a quarterback that he knows could play in this run and shoot style offense that he wants to run, Timmy Chang that is. And like, you can't fault Braden for that. And it's been really frustrating. And that's where you see Braden show his frustration. As you said, Paul, it's starting to come out now, because I think Braden's feeling it, and that's why he was so vocal about the fact that it's like, hey, this I want to throw the football. Like, I want to stay in the pocket. Like, I want to be that true pro style guy, not this dual threat quarterback that has he's been thrust into this expectation now. And yeah, putting up as much rushing yards as our running backs, like, that shouldn't be the case, and netting only 15 yards against Boise State, who is not exactly the shutdown defense. Like, their defense is nowhere near the type of offense that they have, right? I mean, letting up 30 plus points to Utah State, right? Like, so I think that's the part that continues to be frustrating for the team, and now showing the frustration with Braden Shager.
Yeah, I mean, just straight up, frustration is kind of what we all expected at this point. Everybody's frustrated. I think Michael makes a lot of really good points, where you are going to have to eventually get a look at next year. And at some point, I do think that will be Micah. I am of the belief that is the final 3 games if we continue to see Hawai'i trend the direction that they have been trending, which is not towards a bowl game and no chance. Until then, I don't think you can pull the plug on Braden Shager. I don't think it's fair to pull the plug on Braden Shager. And I also think you're right when you're talking about trying to fit a non-shaped, appropriately shaped peg into a non-shaped hole. I typically go with, I think Braden is a triangle peg being placed into a square of a hole, right? Where he fits, he fills up some of the things that you need in that space. But to echo Michael's point and perhaps Rob's point, he also leaves things on the table that you really, really wish he would just take, right? Those throws to the flat. Take the 6-7 yards simple instead of trying to force it 15, 20 yards downfield. I really like the things that Braden can do at times. I feel bad because you're right, he is miscast in terms of his skill set, but at the end of the day, he had an opportunity to leave and didn't. And that means he knows that he can operate this offense, or at least believes that he can operate this offense. I need to see him take that next step again because he's been great. He's been great in a lot of ways, and he didn't turn the ball over in this game. That was a big thing. You need to see him do those little extra things as well to help out winning, not take those sacks, not put himself in harm's way at certain points in general. I really, really want to see him be able to turn it around to finish out because I think he deserves more flowers than he's ever gotten from a lot of Hawaii fans. And those flowers will never come if they don't get the offense working here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, hopefully. Got a quick turnaround before we got to head out to Pullman. Again, that Saturday game is at 9:30 a.m. Hawaii time against Washington State. Definitely get into, obviously, all UH football throughout the week. But for now, we're going to come back and close out the show talking some NFL. And we'll see what Paul thinks about how his New York Jets are going to fare today against the Buffalo Bills. And, of course, the Bears. Bears Super Bowl, baby. We'll be right back on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network. Guaranteed admission.
Wake Up in the Den with Kulale Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Kulale Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and Michael Lasquero. I'm definitely moving it. Why? Because Bears Super Bowl, baby. Bears beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 35-16 in an early morning game yesterday morning. And yes, I did wake up. And if you don't believe me, you can check the receipts because I did post on Twitter. I was like, I was awake. I was posting at 3:30 a.m. And unfortunately, the reason why I was able to wake up that early is because it ended up being a very early night on Saturday. The party, I was getting ready to, record people potentially. Me not partaking, but potentially getting ready for the social media viral moment of Hawaii fans potentially rushing the field, thinking that we were sad from then easily for which ended up being quite an interesting Monday. Before we get into tonight's Monday night matchup to close out the show, just looking at some of the scores from this past weekend. Again, Bears 35-16, multiple scoring touchdowns. So looking good there, Chicago. On the flip side, for our Dallas Cowboys here for the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, suffering the worst loss. I think it was the worst loss in the Jerry Jones era, huh? 47-9 to the Detroit Lions, and that being at home in AT&T Stadium. So it's just only 9 points. Like, ouch! Just
Was
3
it Jerry's
field goals.
birthday? I thought I saw a tweet that said that, but I don't know if it was a joke or if it was actually his birthday.
I think you were looking at the Stephen A. Smith one. Stephen
I
A.
have
Smith,
no idea.
Because he likes to rag on the Dallas Cowboys, and I guess it's Stephen A. Smith's birthday or something. But anyways, but the Cowboys only being able to put up 3 field goals, so no touchdowns for Dallas, and losing to the Detroit Lions 47-9. However, unfortunately for the Detroit Lions, losing one of their main defensive players in Aiden Hutchinson, who is out for the season after suffering a broken tibia bone, I believe, and needed to get surgery right away. So that's unfortunate for the Detroit Lions. Looking through some of the other ones, I mean, the Texans having an easy win over the Patriots, 41-21, a nice shootout game that we expected with the Ravens and Commanders. Baltimore coming out on top 30-23. The Steelers having a big game in Las Vegas in like the Hawaii versus Hawaii crime with those two teams having big fan bases. However, Allegiant Stadium looking very much like a Steelers home game. If you guys seen some of the on like video or whatnot, the Steelers 32-13 over the Raiders, and the Bengals 17-7 over the New York Giants, and Andre Oshivash having still continuing to be a big contributor to the Cincinnati Bengals squad, having a really nice catch there that extended a drive. All right, but getting into it today with the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. As we mentioned earlier, that Paul is very much wearing his New York Jets shirt today. Buffalo, even though the game is at New York, Buffalo coming into town and currently sits at the 1-point favorite via ESPN Bet. Total set at 41.5. I think my original quick picks, I did pick the New York Jets. I don't know, what was the spread on our quick picks when we did it?
Original spread is Jets getting 2.5. And you picked the Jets.
All right, so I did. I know Kyle went the other way in Buffalo. So I got the Jets with the 2.5. I still believe, especially since they are at home, and I'm still the non-believer entirely on this Buffalo Bills staff. I'm also rooting for our guy, Jeff Ulbrich, to start off with his interim head coaching tenure with a win. So we are going with the Jets. But just real quick, Paul, what's your outlook for today's Monday Night Football matchup?
I really have no idea. I'm going to be so honest. I have no clue what to expect tonight because the quotes coming out of the Jets building have been awesome. Refocused team, a team who is apparently doing more during the week, more prepared. All of that's great. It's all eyewash unless you come out and actually play with energy, because I liked what Robert Saleh was saying before. I liked the quotes that came out of the building before a lot of times. And at the end of the day, they just didn't come out ready to play at the start of games. A big reason why you saw them lose against the Broncos, a big reason why they were unable to go and beat the Vikings. You need to come out and start well against good teams. Buffalo, regardless of how you feel about them, they are a good team. They are at the top of the division right now. This is an opportunity for you to take first place in the division. If the Jets come out jazzed up, ready to go, have the juice, the energy that you kind of expect with, 1, firing your head coach midseason, and 2, from just Jeff Ulbrich as a human being. If they do that, they'll come out and they'll win tonight because they've had the Bills' number over the past few seasons. They just are better at home, especially against the Bills. And at the end of the day, you need this win. This is your season if you're the Jets. If you lose this, it changes things dramatically. If you win it, Devontae Adams probably is a Jet by tomorrow, and all of a sudden Hassan Reddick sounds like he might become a Jet by the end of the week. So this is a huge game.
Didn't Hassan Reddick just get a new agent recently?
Yes, literally either today or yesterday.
I do need to break it to you, Paul, though. The unfortunate side, at least how the season has been shaping up for the three of us here in studio. Now, since Michael's team was on a bye week, that technically counts as not a win, and the Bears have won. So what we've seen recently is that usually only one of our teams win throughout the weeks. So
this is true,
we'll
but
see what happens.
I'll counter you and say you did pretty well on your quick picks this week.
I was
so
kind of like thinking.
I'm gonna take that and be like, whose gut feeling got us? That's what it is.
But it's a Monday. It's
True.
not the same day.
Ooh, that is true. Interesting. All right. Well, again, we'll see what happens.
God.
Michael, what is your pick for today's game? We'll give you the 2.5 too.
So in one league where I traded away Josh Allen, got James Cook, I'm gonna be 0-6, so that league sucks. But I do have in my sleeper league, I do have Brees Hall and Greg Zuerlein, so I'm gonna go with the Jets.
Ooh, all right. We're not even going or what about ATS?
I don't even know what the spread is, but
2.5. Or I guess you're going with them to straight
I'm
up.
going with the Jets.
Ooh, straight up. All right.
J-E-T. I mean, it's a lot different when you have Jeff Ulbrich, and
that's what I'm saying.
Sometimes you just need to change the job of somebody to get a spark to the team. What happened with UH? Maybe, I don't know. That's another story.
And again, with Jeff Ulbrich, I keep saying that he gives me Dan Campbell vibes, and Dan Campbell has been able to team around and find a lot of success. So, and we're always going to root for our former Rainbow Warrior player in Jeff Ulbrich. So that's just the vibes that we're going with. And like Paul said, that was my instinct last week when we did our quick pick. So that's what we're going with. So let's go JETS and interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich. But for now, we got to go. So for Paul Brecht, Michael Lasquero, I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani. Mahalo for listening. Bye.
DOIA